Good afternoon everybody, and welcome to the How to Craft Network channel from Tony at Stamps by Me. My name's Claire Manning and I'm here from Thirsty Brush today to do you another demonstration. So I hope you're all having a lovely Sunday, keeping warm and cozy, and this is a super quick and simple, nearly knocked it all over, scraps project for you today. So it's a really nice idea to use up loads of papers if you've got them. Excuse me, having a quick sip of tea. So I'm going to be using, of course, some Thirsty Brush papers. So I've got these scraps here that were left over from another project from our Botanical Dream paper set. So I'm going to be using those. But I know you've probably got tons and tons of scraps left over from other pads. You could make your own papers if you haven't, from stamps and things like that. So I know we did a few scraps projects over on my Claire Manning Craft channel earlier on in the first lockdown, which was nearly a year ago now, which is crazy, isn't it? And another crazy week in the world here. So I thought we'd just revisit some scraps and just do a really quick, simple idea. But this technique, and I call it a technique, but it's just chopping up paper really and laying them out in a certain way, can be used for tons of different card designs. I'm just making it into a simple kind of just because card today. Just adjust that a little bit. There we go. But yeah, you could do this depending on the type of paper you use and the sentiments you use and things like that. You could layer on some stamps as well, but it's really simple. So I'm going to cut some strips of this paper. So you can see my scraps here. They're about, I will give you all the measurements, so if you want to kind of create it exactly same size or scale it up. This is about 4.5 inches in height here. So I'm going to keep that the same as it is, but I'm going to cut some strips in different varying widths from the different style papers. So I probably need, let's do 2 of each design, but I probably don't even need that many, to be honest. So I want to cut some, you really don't need measurements for this, but when I say I want to do them in varying widths, what I mean is I want some slightly thicker than the others. So if I do a slightly thick one and a thinner one from each, and the reason I'm saying don't bother with measuring for this one is that actually the more variation you get, the better your design will be. So that's 2. Design 3, and because these have come from the same paper pad, these are going to give us a very kind of cohesive look. Let's just do another really thin one just in case we need it. But if you want something more daring or more colour clashing, think about mixing your colours and your prints. In fact, the idea for this card came from I was reading an interiors magazine. That's where I get lots of ideas for colour and trends that are around at the moment, things like that. And it was actually a display they'd done of brand new wallpapers for the season for 2021. And to show them off, they'd done like these strips. In fact, it's quite difficult to explain. So when this is going out and I'm on the live chat, I will share the photo on our Facebook group because I screenshot the page. I read my magazines online now to save money and space in the house because I'm a magazine addict and they're all stacking up. So it's actually a really effective way, but they've done it with loads of kind of colour clashing prints and things like that, so you can go wild with it. You could just use some plain ones if you want to mix it up and then put a stamped image over the top. But it's really cool and simple idea, but really effective. Okay, So what I've got here is a piece of white card that I've trimmed down to, this is about 6 by 4, and then a little black that's slightly bigger. So that's going to give us almost like a panel to put on our card. This isn't the size of the card. I'm doing a normal 5 by 7. So on this panel now, I need to kind of arrange these. In fact, some of them I might even only need one, but if you cut a few, then you can keep them and use them other times, can't you? So what I don't want to do is glue them all down, you know, in a nice line like that. This is what I'm going for, this kind of colour variation, height variation. So I'm just doing a kind of rough layout here. I don't want that one. So some thick, some thin, some high, some low. Something like that I think should work. Okay. So to glue them on, to try and get them straight, I mean, you could do measurements and that, but I just always do everything by eye, I must admit. So I'm just going to lay it on my grid here. So let's take advantage of that because we've got it. And that will help us without having to do too much measuring. And I'm going to stick this one that's kind of near the middle first. I'm just using some wet glue and just sticking them flat on. Because these papers are quite thick, they're 200 GSM, they're uncoated. You could ink them up if you wanted to add a bit of extra colour or texture, emboss onto them. I'm just using it as is. But what I would say is you need, if you use the paper that's too thin, sometimes with your wet glue you can get like wrinkles in it. So if you want to use a paper desperately but it's a little bit thin, maybe use tape. And I'm just going to the left. I'm not 100% sure these are all completely straight, but I feel like I've done that too close now. Let's swap for this one that's slightly thinner. Making sure I glue the strips, not the card, because I don't want to get it everywhere. So yeah, they're cool papers, but 200 GSM is quite thick really, so more like card. I think we're going to need another one for the end. I must have slightly glued them on. Not in exactly the same place I tested, but that's fine. We can go with it. I can move now. Because once you put the first one near the middle, or the first one down at least, then you've got like a guide. So let's just trim this a bit thinner. In fact, let's use that one with the little. Try and pick bits of a paper that you really like, you know, bits of a design. So I don't think that's quite straight because I haven't been able to butt it up against anything on this. Let's try again. No, because I haven't got anything to butt it up against. Let's cut a fresh one. Let's not be to get the width kind of right for the gap I've got. That'll be okay. Okay, so that's given us a really easy but fun, simple panel to work with now as a base for the rest of our card. So let's put this bit together and then I'll go and do a sentiment. So I'm doing it as a 5x7 card. What I've done here ahead of time is use the paving punch die, which gives you these lovely punch out little dots. And that's just going to add some texture behind. So you're only going to see a little peek of this round the edge. But rather than it just be, I still wanted white on white, but rather than it just be plain, it's just going to add a bit of texture without it adding bulk. Oops. I do apologise if the lighting's not brilliant today. It's so like foggy and dark. So I think the camera's doing its own thing about deciding whether it wants the flash on or not. So that's our nice textured base. And remember I said I did a black piece slightly longer. That's just going to make that pop. So just wet glue that on flat. And then I will add a little bit of height to that and just add some foam. You can leave it completely flat if you like. It really doesn't matter. Just 3 strips to make it nice and even. So last week we did kind of vintagey cards. What did we do? Thursday we did Valentine's. So today is kind of like clean and simple, I guess. So you're just getting peaks. Not much of those little dots, just little peaks from behind. So I'm going to keep it super simple now and just stamp a black and white sentiment for the middle. Just pop that aside for a second. And I'm going to use those lovely bold sentiments that everybody loves. So this is the hello one. So, and just keep it super simple with black on white. Just going to, because I want to go in loads of times with the ink and get it really, really perfect, crisp and black. And sometimes when the stamps are super sticky, so I'm just adding an extra little bit of safety there. I do sometimes have some spare magnets, but I haven't got one to hand right this second. So just some normal black ink. And let's go in a couple of times. That's the dog eating his duck toy in there. You're wondering what that strange noise is. Just a bit on that L. That hasn't quite. There we go. So it's really nice and crisp. Now, because there's so much ink on there, before I die cut it, because these come with lovely cute little coordinating dies that are just going to give us still the boldness but the little border. I'm going to heat set it and just give it a little dry, because that amount of ink will take a minute or so to dry, and I'm going to smudge it otherwise. Otherwise, all that effort to get it beautiful and crisp, and we've all done it, haven't we? And then you stick your finger in it and you got little paw prints, fingerprints everywhere. So really easy to line up. Look, they fit perfectly. You can see all of the word for our die cutting. Run that through. So nearly done, guys. So what are you up to today? Snowing in a lot of places and super cold again, isn't it? So just having a nice relax, I hope. So just straight across the middle with that, and that's a really easy, simple, clean and simple card, but you can make it as bright and colourful or as snazzy as you like. So I hope you give that a go with your scraps, and you can use any sentiment, but what I would say is keep it bold. Although, you know, that would look just as beautiful with a scripty font. Say you could try different colours in the backgrounds. You could ink up your bits of paper or emboss them, like I say. Do give it a go and share your makes on the Facebook group, the Thirsty Brush Bruschettes. And I will be back Thursday for normal Thirsty Thursday at 1 o'clock. You take care of yourself, guys, and I will see you next time.